a muzzle filled with far too many sharp teeth. Mike grabbed one of Jenkins' silver knives and threw it end over end toward the creature, but it sidestepped with unnatural grace, the blade embedding itself in the wall behind where it had been standing seconds before. "These things move fast," Mike shouted as he ducked behind an ancient armchair for cover. "And they're strong." Jenkins fired his crossbow, the bolt thudding into one of the transformed teen's shoulders. The creature howled in pain, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house as dark blood sprayed from its wound. "It's not enough," Jenkins panted as he fumbled with reloading another bolt. "Silver wounds them but doesn't kill them, at least not quickly." Just then, one of the girls who had been slowly transforming let out a piercing shriek that seemed to vibrate through Mike's bones like a physical force. Her skin began peeling away in patches to reveal something beneath, something pale and emaciated with elongated fingers tipped by needle-like claws. "Vampires," Rhonda realized suddenly. "They're trying to become both." The transformed girl launched herself at Jenkins, her movements quicker than humanly possible even as she remained partially in transition between forms. The old man managed to sidestep just in time, causing the creature to slam into a bookshelf instead, sending ancient tomes and jars crashing to the floor. One of the jars shattered, releasing something small and furry that hissed angrily before scurrying under nearby furniture, a rat-like thing with too many legs and eyes that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly light. Mike used this distraction to grab a heavy brass candlestick from the table and swung it at one of the werewolf teens, connecting solidly with its skull. There was a sickening crunch followed by a yelp of pain as the creature stumbled backward momentarily before shaking its head as if clearing it. "Silver!" Jenkins shouted suddenly. "The silver! It's what we need!" Mike looked around frantically until his eyes fell upon the collection of jars containing various preserved specimens, their glass filled with dark liquid that gleamed under the crimson light filtering through the windows. "The fluid in those jars," Mike realized. "It has silver nitrate in it, right?" Jenkins nodded, a wicked grin spreading across his wrinkled face despite their dire situation. "Exactly, and if we can get enough of it into these creatures." Rhonda grabbed several empty water bottles from a nearby desk and began filling them with the silver nitrate solution from one of the jars. Mike did likewise as Jenkins kept the transformed teens at bay with well-placed shots from his crossbow. The remaining girl had now fully completed her transformation into something resembling neither werewolf nor vampire but rather an unsettling combination of both, her body covered in coarse fur while her face remained pale and emaciated, with sharp fangs protruding from a muzzle filled with too many teeth, her yellow eyes fixed on Rhonda as she began to stalk toward her with predatory intent. "Rhonda!" Mike shouted warnings as he hurled one of the bottles at the creature's feet. It shattered in a shower of glass and dark liquid that hissed where it touched the creature's fur, causing it to yelp in pain before backing away momentarily. The werewolf teen lunged again just as Mike finished filling another bottle with silver nitrate solution. This time, rather than throwing it, he held onto it tightly, waiting until the last possible moment before swinging it like a morning star toward the creature's head. The glass shattered on impact, spraying the viscous liquid across its snout and into one of its yellow eyes. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The eye bubbled and sizzled where the silver nitrate made contact, causing the creature to howl in agony as it clawed at its own face before collapsing onto the floor, twitching violently. Rhonda used this opportunity to grab a heavy brass statue from one of the bookshelves and swung it with all her might toward the remaining transformed teen. The statue connected solidly with its head, causing a spray of dark blood across several priceless ancient texts before the creature stumbled backward briefly before recovering its footing once more. "Enough games?" Jenkins shouted as he reloaded his crossbow again. "This ends now." He fired another bolt, not at the transformed teens this time but rather into one of the bookshelves, causing a section of it to collapse inward in a shower of dust and debris. From behind what remained of the shelving emerged something that made even Mike's blood run cold. A hulking figure standing nearly 7 feet tall with matted fur the color of rust and yellow eyes that seemed to pierce through them all. "Detective Harris," Rhonda whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of her own racing heart. "But how? The blood moon brings change," Jenkins said grimly as he readied another bolt. "And some changes are permanent." Harris, if it could still be called that, let out a guttural snarl before launching itself at them with terrifying speed. Mike barely managed to dodge in time, the creature's massive paws swiping past where his head had been seconds before. "Rhonda!" he shouted as he grabbed another bottle of silver nitrate solution from where they'd set several down earlier. "Now!" She nodded in understanding just as Jenkins fired his crossbow again, this time embedding a bolt deep into Harris's shoulder. The creature howled in pain, stumbling backward momentarily while Mike and Rhonda approached cautiously from either side. "On 3, Mike whispered before counting down silently. As he reached 1, they both hurled their bottles at the same time, Mike's aiming for Harris's head while Rhonda's went for its chest area. Both shattered on impact, spraying dark liquid across the creature's fur which hissed and sizzled where it made contact with silver nitrate solution. Harris roared in pain, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of Jenkins' house, as it clawed at its own face and chest before collapsing onto the floor, twitching violently. "Is it dead?" Rhonda asked, her voice trembling despite their victory. Jenkins approached cautiously, his crossbow still at the ready. "No," he said grimly after examining the creature closely, "but it won't be bothering anyone for a while." Just then one of the transformed teens, a boy who had been partially turned into something resembling neither werewolf nor vampire but rather an unsettling combination of both, stirred on the floor where Mike's bottle had struck him earlier. I feel strange," he said, his voice slurred as if drugged. "Like my mind is splitting." Before anyone could respond further, his body began contorting again, in ways that defied all logic and nature as bones cracked and twisted unnaturally under his skin which rippled with dark fur and pale flesh in equal measure. "Help me," he cried out as something new emerged from within his form, something neither human nor animal but rather an amalgamation of both that seemed to be tearing itself apart piece by piece before their very eyes. Mike turned away, unable to watch the horrifying spectacle any longer while Rhonda and Jenkins stood frozen in shock at what they were witnessing unfold before them. When it was finally over, a few moments later that felt like an eternity, the boy lay still on the floor, his body twisted into unnatural shapes with pieces of fur and flesh scattered across the room like gruesome confetti, under the crimson glow of the blood moon filtering through boarded windows. Rhonda was the first to break the silence that had fallen over them all since the transformation ended abruptly. "He's gone," she whispered softly, tears streaming down her face as she looked upon what remained of someone who had once been just a teenager like herself, now transformed into something monstrous before finally being torn apart by his own body, trying to become both werewolf and vampire simultaneously. Mike placed a hand on her shoulder comfortingly but said nothing. Words seemed inadequate for the horror they had just witnessed together. "Come," Jenkins said quietly, gesturing toward the door. "We should leave this place while we still can. The blood moon is high tonight, and there are worse things out there than transformed teenagers." As they made their way back through Jenkins' house, which now felt less like a sanctuary filled with knowledge of supernatural beings, and more like a tomb containing evidence of dark rituals gone wrong, they could hear howls echoing in the distance from somewhere outside under that cursed crimson moon. "They're still out there," Rhonda realized suddenly. "The other creatures." Jenkins nodded grimly as he opened his front door to reveal streets bathed in unnatural red light with shadows moving unnaturally along walls and rooftops nearby, things that seemed almost alive despite the lack of wind or movement around them. "We have little time," he said, grabbing one last silver knife from the wall before leading Mike and Rhonda out into what remained of their small town, transformed into something resembling a nightmare under that cursed blood moon hanging high above in the sky. As they stepped outside, something moved in the darkness ahead, a figure emerging from between two houses down the street with yellow eyes gleaming under crimson moonlight. One of Harris's companions perhaps, or maybe another creature drawn by the scent of blood and violence that hung heavy in the air tonight. "We need to find somewhere safe," Mike said, his grip tightening on Jenkins' silver knife as they prepared for whatever horrors might await them in their town transformed into something out of a nightmare under that cursed blood moon hanging high above in the sky. "I know a place," Jenkins replied cryptically as he led them down darkened streets toward an unknown destination while behind them, shadows grew longer and darker with each passing moment under that crimson glow filtering through clouds overhead, watching silently from afar until their time came once more to hunt again, when next the blood moon rose high in the sky.